Hey guys, this is such a full circle moment being here. This is going to be a video where I share a little bit of my story, some of the most sensitive part of my story, and how I maintained my progress and continued to grow as a single mom with no license who was newly sober. And so, if you are a really busy mom right now, I think that this could be very empowering for you and maybe give you some ideas that, let's say, the David Goggins of the worlds can't really give you because they haven't walked in your shoes. And so, if you get value from this, make sure you like and subscribe and leave a comment and let me know what you think. Let me know your experience. I would love to be able to relate to you all, and just know you're not in this alone. There's so many women who feel overwhelmed right now and who are responsible for so much more than just themselves. And so just know this video is for you if that is you. And so I'm going to start with my story and then I'm going to give you guys what I did because it's such a full circle moment. And being able to sit in this place specifically, which I'll go over in just a minute, and share my story with you, it's unbelievable because it feels like it was just yesterday. So I hope you get value from this. Let's dive right in. So, in this very seat, I kid you not, about 10 years ago, give or take, I walked to this park. And at the time, I'd had about 6 months of sobriety. I didn't have my kid living with me. I was just trying to get my life back together. I had just gotten out of my second rehab and I just needed a break. I was in a sober living house and I needed to just get out. I was overwhelmed. So I took a walk and I ended up in this park. And behind me, I won't show you the house because I don't want to be creepy and, give away any location, but the house behind me, I sat right in front of it in that field behind me and I just meditated for a little bit. And I just thought, how cool would it be to live in a place like this? To be able to get my son back in my home. Um, because at the time my parents were helping me and they were kind of stepping in so that I could get my life together and be able to raise my son again once I was healthy. And I just looked around, I thought that would be so beautiful. Like, what if I could do this? What if I could become this healthy person who, does this, comes out the other side, and maybe even helps other people? I had that thought right here. And y'all, I kid you not, I ended up moving into that house. That was my first rental once Tristan was back in my care. Tristan's my son. So that's where we started our transformation journey. And I say our because I feel like Tristan, my son, and I kind of grew up together because mentally, I'd say I was about maybe a 15-year-old. I was so flawed. I had no discipline, no self esteem. I was very impulsive. And I was honestly, at the time that I sat there and I had that thought, I didn't trust myself. I was still very new in sobriety and I had a lot of work to do ahead of me. So the fact that I'm sitting on this bench right now in front of that place and telling you guys what I'm about to tell you is gives me chills. Totally gives me chills. So just know that this video is not coming from a place of preaching at you or telling you what you should do. This is coming from a place of, hey, I've been there. This is what I've been through, and maybe I can give you some value in that. And take what you want, leave the rest, but I would love to hear from you. So um, definitely let me know what's going on. That was adorable. There were some kids passing through and they were trying to be quiet. So I paused it. I said, you can go ahead and pass. It's okay. The park's for everybody. Okay, so when I started my journey, I didn't do it because I wanted to just look better. I was very out of control on the inside. I had horrible habits. I really hated myself at the beginning of this because when you're in addiction, it totally strips you of your self worth. So if you've ever been through addiction or you know somebody that's been through it, it doesn't care who you are, how successful you are, what your upbringing was like. It robs you of everything and it hijacks your mind. So when I first moved here, I couldn't be alone with myself in a room. It would freak me out. I was worried I was going to do something, like, was I going to go pick up a drink? Was I going to do something I regretted? I had no self esteem. So, of course, I got the talk therapy. I went to recovery groups. I got a lot of help. But a lot of what I had been through was stuck in my body. And there was so much stored that I needed to release and didn't even know it. So I'll never forget when I was in rehab, that's the first time I went to the gym as an adult. And I was working out with a buddy and he was showing me, the tricep press downs and different things to do. And I just remember falling in love with it from that moment because it was the first time that my mind went quiet. I'd tried the meditation, I'd tried all these different modalities, but something about putting resistance behind my body and allowing myself to feel pain on specific muscles taught me that I could actually channel all this frustration, the trauma, the stress. I could channel that in a way that quieted my mind and released it through my body. So that has been my theme ever since with bodybuilding is channeling energy I don't want anymore, channeling it through my training. And I'll tell you, ladies, I got really, really strong in the process. So once you learn that skill and you really tap into that mind muscle connection, your body's going to change in ways you never imagined. But I'm not going to get too deep into that. I'll make some other videos and there's some other on my channel if you want to kind of sift through and look around. And I do get more into my story as far as overcoming addiction, which I'm never cured. I constantly have to work on it day to day, and I haven't done it perfect. I've relapsed plenty of times, but I take it one day at a time. So if you are interested in listening to more of that part of my story, let me know in the comments, and I'm happy to drop the link to that video. There's a few of them. But this is about being a mom full time. So I get my son back. He's living with me. At this point, I have about a year sober. We're living in that house behind me, and I don't have a license because if I'm just being brutally honest here, I got too many DUIs. So I didn't have a license for a year. And I really had to prioritize going to my recovery meetings, staying healthy, because the last thing I could do was pick up a drink. That was going to ruin me and my family. So I put that as priority. My son went to an elementary school that was up the road. So I would walk him to the school very early in the morning, and bless his heart, he would stay there all day because I would have to go to a job. And then I also was taking a course to get my master's in mental health counseling. And I would have the Uber drop me back off. The Uber would pick me up at his school, take me to work. I would actually be dropped off at work a little early. I worked in a home taking care of these men with muscular dystrophy. And I would get dropped off at a grocery store before my shift. I would get 2 bagfuls of groceries. I would go to the house and I asked permission, can I please use a section of your refrigerator so I can just store, the stuff that's going to go bad until the end of my shift. So he would let me do that. My shift would end. I would grab my groceries. I took my carrier, the car seat carrier. I would take that everywhere with me. So then I would load my stuff back into the Uber. The Uber would drop me off, and then I would either order another Uber to take us from the daycare to home, or I would ditch the carrier and I would meet him at school and we would walk home and I'd have my groceries with me. So that's just one example of like what one day was like. And then there were places within like 5 miles of here that there were recovery meetings. So a lot of times what I would do is I would put Tristan in a stroller and I would jog to the recovery meetings. So I would be jogging like 4 miles, pushing a stroller, and then I'd be, keeping this kid with me during the recovery meeting. And all of that was an extremely, I'm gonna have to keep pausing it from time to time. I don't own the park, you know what I'm saying? So that was just one example, but it was like that for a whole year. And then after that, when I got my license back, I was that mom driving around with like the little blow and goes in your car. So it's been a whole journey. But during that time, keep in mind that when I was in rehab, I found the gym. And before I got Tristan back under my care in my home, I was going to the gym for my mental health and because it was rebuilding me. I could feel myself becoming a different person with every rep. So it became very, very important to me. And so when I got him back, I don't mean to make him sound like he's a dog, but once he was living with me again, that had to be a priority. So I found a way to figure it out. So now we're going to get into what I did, the solution. And I hope you can take something from this. I was trying to refrain from putting my sunglasses on during this video, but whatever. Okay. I took notes. So the first thing is I couldn't think about how hard it was. I'm not saying I would suppress all my emotions. Like I said, I went to therapy. I went through these recovery meetings. I would share about it being hard. But what I didn't do is anytime I was around, say, a friend or whoever, I wouldn't talk about how hard life was and regurgitate it. And I wouldn't focus on how hard it was. If I would have done that, I would have crashed and burned. I trained myself to focus only on what I could do, not what I couldn't, not what the limitations were, because that would have, like I said, caused me to crash and burn. So when you're so busy and your body's almost in survival mode and there's really not much you can do about it because it's just the phase of life you're in, for me, it helps me to not talk about how hard it is and focus about how hard it is unless you're in a space where you're intentionally doing that, like therapy. Or maybe you're meeting with a friend and you just, you need to just let her know what's going on because you're struggling. But not day in, day out. Don't find yourself in every conversation you're talking about how hard it is, because that makes it harder. So that was the first thing I did, is I taught my brain to focus on solutions and not the problem. So that was the first thing. The other thing I did is I raised myself with my kid. Like I said, I was about 15 years old mentally, so I was very immature, and my knee-jerk reaction was, let me just make sure he's okay. I'll make him the healthy meals and I'll eat on the run. Or, I'll put him to bed at a good time, but I need to stay up and catch up on stuff. So it's okay if I go to bed at 2 a.m. and wake up at 5 a.m. That was my knee-jerk reaction. But what I found was that I had to raise myself with him. And yes, it was my job to keep him alive and to provide for him. In order to do that, I had to provide for myself. It goes back to put your own oxygen mask on before you put someone else's on. So I began to raise myself with him. I began to train myself to view myself through the lens of a mom instead of just me looking at me. Because that way I was loving myself more. If if I wouldn't do it to Tristan, I stopped doing it to myself. And that's how I essentially raised myself with him. And I think a lot of moms can take from that, because it's really easy for us to fall into this just all sacrificing mode where we even feel guilty for taking care of ourselves, basic needs. And we don't want to do that. We are better moms when we parent ourselves as well. So that was the second thing, is when I prepared healthy food for him, I sat down and ate with him. If the house needed to not be clean, I didn't clean it. You know what I mean? Like, priorities. And that's another thing, is I would list out what are my priorities. And in the chaos, I would go back to that and say, okay, this tells me exactly what I need to focus on right now, because I feel overwhelmed and I don't know where to put my energy. I would look at the priorities. And if I picked one of those top priorities, I knew I was winning. I knew I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, because there's no guideline for this, right? So that was another big one. This is huge. I took what I needed and I left what I didn't. I learned this from recovery, actually. I took information from motivational speakers and books, people like Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins, who else? Brene Brown, all these different people. And in meetings I would go to, support meetings, I would really listen for the solutions I needed. And it's really easy to find the differences or find what you don't agree with, especially when you're in survival mode. Your brain wants to look for, see, I can't do it. I can't do that. I can't do this. It's very restricted. So know that your brain's restricted when you're in survival mode, and work on opening it up. Just say, but what if? What can I take from this? Don't look for what you don't need. Look for what you can take. A great example is David Goggins. And I have sort of a love-hate with the David Goggins mentality. Here's my take on it. When it comes to David Goggins, I think if you are a single person who is only responsible for yourself, who doesn't have kids, and you're very undisciplined, and you aren't paralyzed by shame, then David Goggins can be very helpful. He can jumpstart you. He can give you a kick in the butt, that whole mentality, right? But if you are raising a bunch of kids, or if you're a single mom and you are talking to yourself the way that David Goggins talks to himself, I don't find it productive. If I were to sit there in the mornings, as a single mom, when I needed to show up with my cup overflowing, even though I didn't feel like it was overflowing, the last thing I needed to do was say, stop being a little bitch. Like, even just saying that kind of makes my stomach like, ugh, you know? We don't need to break ourselves down. We need to build ourselves up. So I'm not a huge fan of the David Goggins content, but I understand why he does what he does. It works for him and it works for a lot of people. And this is where I say, take what you need, leave what you don't. You don't have to go down the David Goggins road. You don't have to go down the Tony Robbins road. You don't have to go down any of them, but pick what works for you. And a good idea to know what that is to tune into your solar plexus. I wish I would have done this sooner. And looking back, that's one thing I would have focused more on is what makes this area in my body tighten up like that. If it tightens like that, just leave a question mark. Is that for me? But if you feel it kind of release when you're taking in information or when you're doing something and you feel that release, put that on your schedule. Put those in your resources because that is your inner guidance system and it's telling you this is for me, this is helpful. So that's a big one is take what you need and leave the rest. Okay, now let's get into actually working out. This is funny. So movement is medicine. We don't need to be at the peak of our bodybuilding or, fill in the blank fitness. We don't need to have this perfect body when we're in the midst of raising children and we're in survival mode. If you can, freaking badass, that's cool. But most of us we don't have that space. And I'll tell you something I learned in counseling school is that when women or men are going through the phase where they're raising young children and they don't have that time to go home and be alone and process stuff, they taught us in counseling school that you don't always go deep with people. You sometimes have to keep it a little more on the surface because if that person leaves your session and you've brought up all this trauma and they go home and they don't have a place to process it, they don't have the space, that's detrimental. It can be. So it's the same thing for your fitness journey. If you sign up with a coach or, maybe you start some program you found online and it's not attainable for you, it's just not working. And every time you try it, you fail and you're getting discouraged. That's not for you. You've got to find what works for you. So I'll bring it back to my story. At that phase, there is no way in hell I could have gotten myself ready for a bodybuilding show. I just know that. That was not in my reality. If I were to do that, I would have had to sacrifice so much mom time because when I would pick up my son, I only had about 4 hours with him in a day on a weekday. I would have had maybe an hour with him, and I did not have the money at the time to do a show, pay a coach, or even really go to a gym. So that was not in my reality at that time. If that would have been my goal, I would have been so discouraged and I wouldn't have hit it. So you got to be realistic on what is a attainable goal for you to hit during this phase in your life, remembering that the phase will pass. It passes so fast and you want to remember time with your kids without being in survival mode constantly. So that's why we're going to work in exercise and being intentional with your kids and being the mom that you know you are. So stop being so hard on yourself. Let me point this out. If you hear nothing else, hear this. If you stay active during your children's young years, when they are a little bit older and more independent and you have more space to go do longer workouts and spend more time on yourself, your body it's equipped for it. I want you to hear that. I did not have these hour-plus long workouts. I didn't have perfect macros during this time in my life, but I just stayed active and I tried to stay intentional about what I ate. I didn't get super specific about it. I just stayed intentional. And when Tristan got a little bit older and I had more space, my body took off because then I had the discipline. I knew the information. All I had to do is apply it now, and I had more time to do it. So consider this sort of like a prep phase for the next phase and enjoy it. Just enjoy moving because movement is medicine. So here's something I would do. A lot of things actually. So keep in mind, I'm at this house, right? I can't drive anywhere. Let's pretend that it's a Saturday and I've got Tristan all day and, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. And when he goes down for a nap, sure, I could push myself to do a workout during that time, but I am so tired and keep in mind, I'm raising myself too. I need a nap. I need a nap. So what do? I take a nap with him. So we wake up, uh-oh, when am I going to work out? That's when you get creative. So what I would do is I would take him in the back and in our backyard And I would set up all his little figurines like out in the dirt. And what I did is I took my book bag and I filled it up with some bricks that we had outside. And then I took another bag and I put a bunch of books in it, like dictionaries and stuff we had around the house. And I, gave myself some resistance. And I would put the book bag on my back of bricks and I would do squats, I would do step ups, I would do lunges. I would even stick it on my feet and do quad extensions. I would do hamstring walkouts back and forth. And I would work out for about 40 minutes while he had the attention to play with his little figurines. And sure, he would interrupt me. He would say, "Hey, look at this, look at that." And some days he would interrupt me more than others, but that was okay. You know what it did? It gave me my health and it gave him an example. And so it normalized movement for him. And I'm going to tell you, if your kids, say you have three or more kids, having them all playing outside, you might not be able to work out depending on what their ages are. Do not feel guilty for putting your children in front of TV for 30 to 45 minutes. Do not. If that's what it takes for you to be healthy and get your movement in, do it. Do not feel guilty about that. This whole like, oh, TV shouldn't be the babysitter. Okay, let people who have space in their life and who that's really important for apply that. But I have a thing about that. I felt so much shame about that for so long. And you know what? My son turned out pretty darn good. So I'm just saying, don't feel too bad. Okay, the other thing is I would play with him when we went places. It's so funny because I've been to a trampoline park recently and I talked to some moms while I'm there with much younger kids and they're like, yeah, if only I had the time, I wish I had the time to exercise. And they're sitting there like watching their kid jump on the trampoline and climb and do all this stuff. Do it with them. Jump, climb, run. Playgrounds are some of the best places to get a workout in. You can do pull-ups, you can do push-ups, you can do sprints outside, you can do step-ups. There's always benches and stuff. You can do dips on the pull-up bars. You can do so much on a playground and you can have fun with your kid while you do it. So what I always did is when Tristan would take a nap, I would take a nap too. And I get this is my story, not yours, so you'll find your own way. But I'm just giving you some ideas. And then on the playground, when he would play, I would play. So that way I'm getting my exercise and I'm getting my sleep. I'm taking care of myself just like I'm taking care of him. And so play with your kids. Plus, they're freaking awesome memories too. You might be tired as hell, but at least you get your exercise in and you can sleep well at night. Okay, last thing as far as exercising, I would run and walk everywhere. Like I was saying, I would run up to that meeting. I learned this because I didn't have a license, so I had to run and walk everywhere. But ask yourself in the small moments, could I be moving more? So, say you've got 3 kids and they have a lot of energy, and you're taking 2 of them to a doctor's appointment, and you got one that you're keeping up with. Maybe the doctor's office is on the 5th floor. Why put all your kids in an elevator when you could climb the stairs, get your steps in, and get some of their energy out? So just kind of thinking outside of the box here. And I know you're exhausted. I know you are. I remember very well. And, to be honest, I don't know if I would have come across this video, but that's why I share my story with you in the beginning. So you know that this is coming from a place of having been there and now being outside of that phase. The phase goes by so fast. It doesn't feel like it, but then once it's past, you have more freedom. Your kids can keep themselves alive without you being there. And that's why I'm here making this video for you in the middle of the day, because I can. So you'll come out of it, but just maintain your health while they're young. And that way you can blossom once they're a little more independent. And don't forget how important it is to eat. One thing I didn't put on here that I meant to is scheduling is everything. And kind of like I told you, I would, buy my groceries, leave my groceries at my employer's refrigerator, get an Uber on the way home. I had to always be planning ahead. So for years, I couldn't always stay in the moment. So don't feel bad about that either. You have to do a lot of planning and you're constantly thinking about the next move when you're a mother of young kids. So don't feel bad about that. That's completely natural. What you can do, what I did, is I would use the moments where I didn't need to plan, like for example, doing dishes at night and my son's in bed. I would use those to be mindful. I didn't have time to sit and meditate, but I did have time to, once I put Tristan to bed and I was cleaning the house, that was my meditation time. So I would clean and I would only focus on cleaning. I wouldn't listen to any music. I wouldn't listen to anything. I would just focus on cleaning. And it was the same thing with training for me. I wouldn't listen to music when I first started training because it was too noisy. I needed to clear out. So that's another thing, is maybe try not listening to music or listening to podcasts while you're doing things. All right, I'm going to wrap it up here. The last thing I'll say about programming when you're a really busy mom is, I mentioned that I would work out when Tristan was awake and I would nap when Tristan napped. After I put him to bed for a long time, I would do like the half twos. And then there were nights where I just would feel sad. Like I would feel numb and I would feel like like, why am I even doing this? Truly. Not in a way where like I wanted to, like, nothing like that, but um I struggled. And what I started doing is something for myself after Tristan would go to bed. Not stuff that I didn't really want to do, but I knew I needed to, like work out or clean the house. I would do that stuff sometimes, but doing something that I genuinely enjoyed, like watching a comedy. It might be like painting my nails and giving myself a spa night. Just those little things go a long way. Giving yourself a bath. Like, don't always feel like you have to be playing catch up in the quiet moments. Maybe give yourself the gift of the quiet moments. Because again, if you're raising yourself with your kid, like I did, then your kid deserves to have downtime and your kid deserves to have space to play. So allow yourself to have that space to play. One day the house can be in perfect order when the kids are a little bit older. But for now, let your house be just a little messy and give yourself time to play. Okay, I'm going to end with this. Clear out the noise. I did this really fast. So, any sort of social relations you have, friendships you have that do not leave you feeling better than they found you, have to go. And some of you guys already know, it's just a given. You're like, oh, yeah, I don't even have time for that. So, I know some of y'all are really there. But if any of you find that you're spending time away from your kid, away from your goals, and hanging out with anybody who drains you, the relationship needs to be over. You got to move on. So always connect with people who fill your cup, not drain it. And I'm not saying your friends can't go through hard times. Of course, it's a give and take relationship, but you know what I mean. There's a difference between someone having a bad day and somebody always having a bad day. So protect your energy because you are so worth it. And just in case no one told you, if you've made it this far to this video, it's because you really care. Like, you care about being a mom and you care about yourself. And I just want to say that that alone shows what a freaking fantastic job you're doing. So just keep doing it. And again, I would love to hear from you in the comments, and like and subscribe. If you want more videos on stuff like this, let me know. This is your community, not just mine. So I love you guys, and I'm so empowered by my community. And oh, okay, I'm about to start crying. All right. I'll see y'all later. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope this helped.